Okay, Terry.
Roach.
Hi. We're sitting here in the living room of the Roaches, and they all reportedly saw a flying saucer, or I'm sorry, a UFO. A flying saucer is one kind of UFO, a few years ago, and I'd like to find out a little information about it, where you saw it, when you saw it, describe it. So, Barry, you had the clearest picture of it. What happened? Where did you see it? Just kind of describe your experience for us.
Well, it was more than a few years ago. It was more like 10 or 11. And we were coming from Fort Wayne. We live in Arcola. It's west of Fort Wayne. And we were just coming into Arcola, and we were with myself and two of my friends were coming home. And we saw this like a blip in the sky. And it was bright, and it seemed to maneuver in odd fashions, compared to what we had known as far as helicopters and standard planes and such. And we just sort of watched it and then joked around about what it might be, and then just sort of dropped the idea of it. And I took this other friend of mine on home. Well,
now you were in your car?
Yes, we were in our car.
So you first saw it from your car?
Right.
Did you stop the car?
No, because, well, it was just in a continuous motion, and it seemed to fade off more to the west.
Was the object above you, in front of you, behind you?
I guess it'd be to the south, be off to the left,
Okay.
and above. And my friend, well, he lived at the lake, which was north, the opposite direction the object was, and we dropped him off and came back, and we got down to, I guess it is Arcola Road, or Yellow River Road, and the road I was coming on tees into this, and the object was right straight in front of us. I mean, it was off in the distance, but it was right there. We had to see it. And my brother was with me at the time, and we commented on the fact that this isn't normal for what we know in the way of aircraft. So, being teenagers, 15, 16, 17 or whatever, we knew that no one would believe us, so we stopped at the first neighbor that we came to. And we called Mr. and Mrs. Johnson out, their two kids, and they said, "We'd like you to look at something." And we told them what we saw, and we pointed out where we were seeing the object, and sure enough, they saw the same thing.
The neighbors also saw it?
Yes. And
where was the object at this time?
Well, it was still in the west, or in the south, but it was, well, let's see. It's hard to describe the direction, because as far as the...
How far away approximately was it?
It was in terms of miles, but it's definitely rather large, because it was so more or less so clear for as big as it was, and yet so far away.
Okay, was it high in the sky, or did it seem to be close to the ground?
I'd say it was rather high at the time, and we stood there and watched it for a while, and it began to lower, and I was kind of excited about it, so I left the Johnson place and went on home, and this was about a half a mile down the road. Got my folks, my two sisters out, and we just sit there and watched it for maybe, 10, 15 minutes more.
Okay, now how much time has transpired from the time you first saw it in your car, say, to the time you went to the Johnsons?
I would say maybe 20 minutes. And we watched it at home maybe for another 15 minutes after leaving Johnson's. And then, well, we saw that it was sort of a cylinder type deal with window panes, and had a green and red light, I believe, at the top. And it seemed to rotate because on the bottom there was a large spotlight. And every once in a while it would rotate, or what seemed to be rotating, and it would flash onto the ground, and you couldn't look directly at the light. It was considerably bright. It was like landing craft lights on a bigger airplane.
Now, when you were home and saw it, how close was it? Was it much closer at this point? I mean, it sounds as if you had a much better picture of it now.
Well, it had moved closer to both Johnsons and us. Like I said, it was only half a mile apart. But it was still in terms of miles away. because when it disappeared, it just went down behind the Johnson's barn, and you could see it was off in the distance yet, but it was so far off, and when it lowered, it just disappeared behind the barn.
But if the object was behind the barn, that's getting pretty close then. You said it was a half mile from their house to yours?
Well, our house was a half mile from Johnson's, but it's just like any other object it could be off in a distance, like going down over a hill. It could be miles away, but yet it could disappear like that. And that's about the way this was.
So it seemed as if it was behind the Johnson's barn?
Yes, it just went down over the horizon, I guess you'd say.
Did it seem to be remaining stationary, or was it moving all during this time?
It had a slow turn to it. And that's the thing that caught our eye at first, because when we first noticed it, when we were coming from Fort Wayne, it would be stationary, and all of a sudden it would drop, and it seemed to accelerate. Well, like I said, speeds that we didn't realize what seemed to be possible. It'd take off in horizontal directions, vertical directions. It'd just stop and go at will.
So it could go backwards, frontwards, to the side,
climb
up
and drop,
down.
right.
Did it have any of the features we associate with normal aircraft, like wings, propellers?
Not that we can make out. Like I said, it looks cylinder to me, and it seemed to have 2, maybe 3 levels to it. And because the center of it seemed to have what looked like conventional window panes, and you could see that there were lights on the inside, or what seemed to be lights coming from the inside because it was illuminated. And at the top there were the 2 other lights, the red and the green, and at the bottom was the spotlight. Now there may have been 2 spotlights, I don't know.
Do you feel as if it were following you?
No, not really, because it continued in what I believe its own pattern, going straight, I guess it would be west. Whereas when we turned off and went to the lake to take my friend home, there it was. I mean, it wasn't exactly as if it was following us north when we turned, because it was there where it was when we left it.
But apparently it was in your range of vision for quite a long time.
Yes.
So that would mean that it was not moving either very fast or not moving at all. If it were moving at a great speed, it would have been out of your vision.
Well, we're only talking from when we first sighted it. Our home was only 2 miles out of Arcola, and we was right on the outskirts of Arcola, so we're only talking at the most 3 miles between my first sighting and when we last saw it.
So about how many minutes then? 10 minutes perhaps?
As far as the total viewing of the object? I'd say maybe 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes, but still, if it were even flying at the rate of a normal aircraft, it would have been out of sight before 20 minutes, wouldn't it?
Probably, if it would have continued in one direction. But like I said, it would go one direction,
right.
drop,
what I'm
come
trying
back.
to get at is that the object was in a general area.
Oh, yes.
For quite some time, comparatively.
It stayed in the same area. We'll just go back and forth.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That it was staying in the same area,
Yes.
of going up and down.
Like it would
sideways
fly
and
into
so
our coal and then come back out to our house, then go back into our coal and then come back out.
Now, as it was moving, did it seem to be moving at a great rate of speed?
When I saw it, when I was coming home, it did. But when we were standing and watching it, it seemed to just be more or less hovering. That's why I said it seemed to rotate, and once in a while this white light would flash around on the ground, and you couldn't see it.
Okay, so you never at any point got a close-up view of it. This was all
Not
from
when
a distance.
Right, because it was probably 9 o'clock at night. It was in the summertime. It was still sort of light, but yet it was on the verge of darkness too.
Now, do you travel this road often, or at the time did you travel it often?
Oh
All
yes,
the
quite
time.
often.
Every day.
Had you ever before seen anything like this?
No.
Have you ever since?
No.
No, I've been looking, but
Did you, let's clear up another point. Did you report it? I think you said you did not.
We
because
did.
You felt, you did
We
report
did.
it.
we called
Yeah,
Bearfield, and the neighbors called the sheriff's department. And there was no reported sighting of any object. There was supposedly no aircraft of that type in the area as far as a helicopter or anything like that goes either.
Now, did Bearfield see anything in the radar?
No, they said there was nothing.
There's nothing in the radar. Now, what kind of response did you get from the authorities when you called this in?
I thought we were nuts.
They did not take you seriously?
No, they...
Well, this was in 65 or 66, and everything was,
Can you remember the year?
it was 65.
Yeah.
There was a famous sighting in New Hampshire during that time. I wonder if it was even the same day or the same year.
All I remember was in 65, and it must have been June or July, because it was pretty warm. But, you know, that was when there was a rash of sightings, and everybody seemed to think that they saw one. Everybody was disclaiming it was swamp gas and balloons and every other thing.
Okay, did both of you see it also?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I did also.
Is there anything that you perhaps left out, or your own impression of it?
Well, I remember one thing that, like, it would go towards Arcola, and then there was like a wooded area right there just outside of Arcola, and then it'd come around and it would disappear from sight from us, and then it looked like it would come up over these trees and look like it'd have like a big blinding headlight, and it was bright. It looked like it was really close, but yet it took a while for it to get to our house, you know, so we figured it was, you know, really far off, but the light was really bright and it was blinding
So that's one of the
to us.
most distinctive impressions you have, is a blinding headlight type of light on the object.
The windows really got me, though, because you could really see the windows. It looked like there was 2 feet in front of you, the windows did. And
Despite the fact that it was quite some distance.
yeah, it was. But you could really see the light out, you could really see the windows on it.
Okay, how can you account for that? A normal aircraft, for example, if it were even a half mile away in the air, I think it would be difficult to pinpoint a window, for example.
You couldn't do
Was there
it.
something illuminating from it that
Yeah.
seemed to magnify it, that brought it sharper into your focus?
No, I just feel it was a large aircraft,
Yeah.
and it was illuminated from the inside.
You couldn't see anybody inside, all you could see was the windows and the
No, we don't
lights.
claim to see any people or anything like that. I just say we saw an object, and that was it.
But, okay, we have 3 distinct things, if I'm correct. We have a blinding headlight, or a very, very bright headlight or spotlight of
Right.
some kind. We have very clear view of windows. That was your main impression. And you mentioned also the red and green lights
Yes.
on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these were in addition to the spotlight, or were
Yes.
these the spotlight?
No,
No.
these were in addition. These would appear to be on top of the craft.
They were on top. They had a headlight type thing coming from the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cylinder in
Well, the
shape.
headlight seemed to be hanging from below. To me, it didn't seem as if it was attached right to the front, as if you would on a vehicle or a chopper or something like that. It hung from underneath of it.
The spotlight and the headlight I think, were like the same light. At times it would just look like it was hanging straight down, but at other times it looked like it was coming, you know, straight out from the side.
Straight out
Like
from
when
the
it
center.
would turn and it would come back up out of the trees, it looked like a headlight.
Did you both see the red and green lights?
Yes, I did.
They were very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
They were unmistakably red and green.
Uh-huh.
Right.
This was in addition to the spotlight.
Right.
And did you see the windows also?
I seen them, but I really didn't pay that much, you know.
But you saw the windows.
Yeah.
Would you both agree that it was cylinder in shape?
Yeah.
So that the 3 of you are in agreement with what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently people will, seeing the same thing will have different descriptions of it. This would imply that you all got a very good view and a fairly consistent view, rather than just a glimpse or one sharp view that lasted for perhaps a second. You had time enough to see this object and even to study it.
I think so.
Is there anything else about it that you can remember? Anything else that it did? Anything else on it? Anything that the lights perhaps did? Like the red and green lights, did they flash on and off? Or did they stay on?
No, to me, the lights that were on top of the craft were on at all times,
Mm-hmm.
and the beacon or whatever, the white light, whatever it was, on the bottom of the craft seemed to be on at all times, but it just wasn't facing us at the times, because you could see where it might be shining off in a distance. It gave when it wasn't not facing us, it gave the appearance of the Lincoln Tower light shining off like a beacon through clouds, that type of effect.
Yeah.
Did this light ever hit you directly to the
No.
point where you had to turn your head?
No,
No,
But it
Never
was
shined
very
it.
bright,
very.
Yeah.
extremely bright,
Mm-hmm.
and it just lit up the sky.
I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it goes so far as to say it lit up the sky, but whatever it was shining on was definitely
that-
lit up.
Yeah.
To be more precise, than the area that it was in lit up as a result
Yes.
of this bright spotlight. And yet you were able to see the entire object, to describe it as cylinder.
Well,
Was there a
To
color
say-
to it? Okay, go ahead.
to say that we could see that I could see the entire object isn't really correct, because it just, from the lights that were on it, you could see that there was a light on the bottom, the bright light on the bottom, the green and red light at the top, and the fluorescent type effect, or the illuminating effect in the center, and the window pane effect, and the way it could turn. I seem to assume that it was cylinder. I mean, that's the only object, only
Yeah.
shape that I could visualize it ever being.
It looked like it was silver in color.
Silver.
No, I really didn't notice that.
You mentioned something else I think we should pick up on. You mentioned levels or layers.
Yes,
Yeah.
it seemed to, because the craft, like I said, it had the lights top, the bottom, and the panes. The panes seemed to divide it. I mean, the distance from the top where the lights were to the window panes, and from the window panes to the white light at the bottom, seemed to be
Just
really a
about-
large gap. I mean, so much of a gap that it couldn't possibly be one, like one large shell. I mean, let's either pretty tall or had elevators or something. I don't know, but
Do you have an approximate size of the object? I mean, even let's say very big, small. From what you're saying, it was very big.
I would say the object was extremely large. I don't know how it compared to a 747 or anything like that. It's been considerable time since I've seen it, but I would say it was larger than most
Okay,
conventional aircraft.
Yeah, we need something to compare it to, and that was good. Let's go back to the authorities. Can you remember anything that they said when you called it in? And first of all, how many people saw this? The three of you, the Johnsons, Mr. and Mr. Johnson, that's
My
5.
2 other brothers,
Two other brothers,
and their parents.
and your parents, so 9
And
people.
their 2 children.
Yeah.
Okay, 11 people then.
Yes.
11 people, and they all would verify this, that they saw it, and they would all agree, I assume you've all talked about this, as to what you saw.
Well, Johnson's, I haven't seen them since I moved, and it's been probably 6-7 years. But I would like to think that they would verify it, because they did see it.
Okay, that's a sizable number of people. I mean, 11
Yeah.
people to see the same object at the same time. Did you tell the authorities all this? Did you go into as much detail as we're going into today?
No, we just simply called Bearfield to find out if there was any sightings of any, or if there was any aircraft in the area. They said no. That was more or less the conversation. We hung up, and supposedly the neighbors called the sheriff to find out if anybody else reported anything. And he said, "Well, we don't think so," and that was about the size
Did
of
you
that.
talk to the sheriff yourself?
No, we did not.
Neither of you talked to the sheriff. So you called 2 people, or you called Bearfield, and the sheriff was
Right.
called by somebody else.
Yes.
Right.
Now, had anybody else reported seeing this on that day? You said,
Not to my knowledge.
don't
No
know.
one's
to your
ever.
knowledge, nobody else had called in with a sighting. Bearfield had not tracked it on the radar.
No. They said
Yeah.
they hadn't.
They said
Yeah.
they had not.
Mm-hmm.
And did the people at Bearfield just kind of dismiss you as, well, you're hallucinating, kind of?
Well, we never, when we called, we didn't really say, "Hey, we've seen a UFO." We just called and asked, "Are there aircraft in the area?" And we specified the area that we was, concerned about, and they said no.
Did you tell them in any way what you saw?
No.
You did not. But when the sheriff was called, was he told that you saw an object?
Well, we're not exactly sure of that because we didn't call. It was, as far as I know, it was Mr. Johnson.
You did not call the papers, any media?
No.
No.
So as far as you know, really, you didn't really report it to Bear Field. You simply asked if they had
Correct.
spotted anything
Yeah.
unusual on their radar. Okay. Would you say that you're convinced? Are you convinced that what you saw was not an aircraft? That is a normal aircraft,
Yes, I don't
an
think it was.
airplane.
No, I don't think it was an airplane.
I'm thoroughly convinced it wasn't anything that we know today. I mean, it may have been something that the government has as far as their experimental that they want to admit to, but I would stake just about anything on the fact that it was not anything that I've ever seen. And I spent 4 years in the military, and I've seen a lot of aircraft. And
What branch of the military
Navy.
were you in? Okay, so are you convinced that it was not a normal aircraft?
I am convinced it was, and I haven't seen anything like it since, or even comparing size or and looks or the lights it had on it or anything.
Are you convinced?
Yes. It's like my brother said, I don't necessarily think it was a UFO from outer space or anything. I think it was more probably our own than something from...
Well, why do you think that?
I know,
Is
well,
it difficult
because...
for you? Do you believe in the possibility of aircraft from
Oh
outer
yes,
space?
if we can travel to outer space and to other planets, why can't they come here?
But that would assume there is life on other planets.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, but
Possible.
you think there is the possibility of aircraft from another planet, UFO, but in this particular case, you're more inclined to think that it was a United States
Yeah.
kind of experimental plane or aircraft.
well, I just feel that could be a possibility. From the way it maneuvered, I feel if the United States had anything like that, it'd have been out long. It'd have been out since
Yeah.
that sighting.
Yeah.
But there's been nothing come out, and I myself feel that it was a UFO.
Okay, but you would be more inclined to think that it was some kind of experimental aircraft.
Well, it could be.
It could be.
Yes.
Okay, you're not. You would all say it could be, but you would believe that it's a UFO.
Well, it would still be a UFO if it was something from our government, because if it was, they never brought it out, so
Yeah.
it'd still class as a UFO.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is there anything else you want to add?
I can't think of anything.
So that, in closing, we could say that from every way that we describe an object, size, the apparatus connected with it, the lights, the red and green lights, its flying maneuverability, it's going up and down, sideways, back and forth, that from all these different things, it did not fit in any way any conventional kind of aircraft that you have ever seen.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's nothing like we'd ever seen before.
Thank you.